Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. My name's Alan, and in this video I'm going to talk about the materials for week 11 ULab 3162, which is about persuasive speech. So let's start. First of all, a definition for persuasive speech. We say that it is a kind of speech in which the speaker is intending to make the audience or some kind of people let's say, believe in something or agree with him about something. So the whole purpose is to convince people either to accept or agree with something. And like all other types of presentations, like all other types of even essays, a good persuasive speech must be well organized. And it must also include some facts, some, let's say, good details, some examples, and especially some, let's say, quotations from famous people, let's say some opinions and ideas from the experts, from, let's say, some important people. As we have discussed before, let's say, while trying to collect the information, trying to collect, let's say, the ideas to write, for example, a paper, a scientific paper, it would better let's say bring quotations, opinions of other experts, other, let's say, scholars, because their opinion, since they're accepted, since they're well known, and since, let's say, they have expertise in, let's say, a specific subject, their opinion and their quotations in our presentation, speech, or research paper will add, let's say, credit or credibility to, let's say, what we are arguing, what we are discussing. Well, generally speaking, there are three main purposes for a persuasive speech. One is to reinforce, the second is to modify, and the third one is to actuate. But what do we mean by each of these? When we say reinforce, we mean making something strong. Like what? Like, for example, people already believe in something, they already accept something, so we try to reinforce their, this belief. Or they disagree with something, we may try to reinforce, let's say, this disagreement. We may want to, for example, make this disagreement or agreement, belief, or anything else, let's say, strong people. The second, as I said, is to modify. Modify means to change. So the purpose here is to make people change their opinion or mind about something. The third, which is to actuate, is to encourage people to take specific action, for example, against something or for something. So, in summary, we say the whole purpose of a persuasive speech is to make something stronger, to strengthen something, to try to make people, for example, change their opinion about something, or to try to convince them to do something, to take, let's say, an action, or to, let's say, convince them not to take an action against something or for something. Well, about different types of persuasive speech, there are three different types. The first is speech on proposition of fact. When we say speech on proposition of fact, that means the speaker is trying to prove something either true or false, to prove that something either exists or, let's say, does not exist. This is what we mean by proposition of fact. So it's about the truth or falsity of proposition. By proposition, we mean an idea, a notion. It could be a theory. The second type is speech on proposition of value. So you see, this is an evaluative speech. By evaluative speech, we try to evaluate, let's say, the worth of something. We try to understand how valuable something is. So in this type of persuasive speech, when we are trying to evaluate something, we will have to make sure that we have enough evidence, that we have, let's say, collected proof, we have, let's say, appropriate measures to, let's say, be more convincing, to show that, for example, something is either worth mentioning, worth, let's say, accepting, worth agreeing with, worth listening to, or not. The third type of persuasive speech, as you can see here in this slide, is speech on proposition of policy. So speech on proposition of policy is whether or not, let's say, to take an action. Either we try to convince people to take an action or not to do anything about something. So you see, here the purpose is to actuate, as we mentioned before. And the language here is very important. This is something that later in the following slides we're going to talk about. You will have to be able to use the appropriate speech so you can provoke or arouse, let's say, certain, let's say, emotions even. Of course, the whole purpose is not to arouse only emotions, but you know, the emotions themselves can lead to, let's say, some certain action. So the language that you use is very important, and we're going to talk about the language in the following, let's say, slides. But here, generally speaking, when we talk about strategies of persuasive speech, you know, there are three different strategies. Three different strategies are, let's say, ethos, pathos, and logos, as you see here. So what do we mean by ethos? You know, ethos is the ability to convince, sorry, due to the speaker's reputation. You know, sometimes someone can easily convince other people, you know, convince them to change their opinion, to accept something, to do something. And this ability comes from their reputation only, because they are popular among people, because a lot of people like them. So this popularity, let's say, will cause the people to follow them, will cause the people to agree with what they say. You know, this could be something sometimes unconscious, like people unconsciously can be affected by what, for example, what these popular people do or what these popular people believe in. But it's not only about, let's say, their popularity that matters here. There's something else that, you know, recently the scholars have added to ethos, and that is, let's say, the ability, the knowledge, let's say the knowledge, not ability, the knowledge that this person has in that certain subject matter. You know, apart from being popular, the person must also, let's say, show a good command of the subject, must also, let's say, prove he must be accepted by people as a knowledgeable person, as a person who knows about the subject. And that will add, let's say, to his credibility, that will add to, let's say, his ability to convince people along with his popularity.